I watched them inject poison into your veins when you were 10 years old, and I have spent 22 years waiting to tell you who ordered it." The maid's hands trembled as she signed those words, standing in the dim light of Dante Moretti's kitchen at 2 in the morning. And the most powerful mafia boss on the eastern seaboard felt his world collapse into silence for the second time in his life. But we need to go back to how she got here, back to the moment that started everything. If you're already feeling that tension, that anticipation of what's about to unfold, hit that subscribe button right now. 3 weeks earlier, Dante had stood in his penthouse conference room, watching his uncle's lips form words that would have broken a lesser man. "Face it, gentlemen," Salvatore Moretti announced to the assembled family heads, gesturing dismissively toward his nephew. "The Moretti Empire deserves a leader who can actually hear his enemies coming, not a broken, defective." The crack of Dante's hand against the mahogany table silenced the room. His fingers moved with brutal precision, and his interpreter Marco voiced the words with cold authority. "Finish that sentence, uncle, and I will finish you." Salvatore's face cycled through rage, then humiliation, then the bitter acceptance of a man who had just remembered his place. 20 years ago, this same uncle had whispered to Dante's dying father that a deaf boy could never lead the family, that the Moretti legacy would crumble under someone who lived in silence. Now, at 32, Dante controlled the most powerful criminal organization on the eastern seaboard. His empire stretched from New York to Miami. His name was spoken in whispers by men who had killed without hesitation, and his uncle stood in his presence only because Dante allowed it. The meeting ended with Salvatore retreating like a wounded animal, his eyes burning with hatred that had festered for 2 decades. When the room emptied, Dante turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. Silence. It was all he had ever known. A world without his mother's voice, without music, without the warning of approaching footsteps. He had been born into silence, though not by nature's design. No, someone had stolen his hearing. Someone had made him this way. And despite all his power, all his reach, all the blood he had spilled to uncover the truth, he still did not know who. If you want to find out who stole Dante's hearing and why, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you do not miss what happens next. The new maid arrived on a Tuesday. Dante did not care about household staff. They were ghosts to him, faceless figures who cleaned his penthouse, prepared his meals, and disappeared before he noticed them. His head of security, Victor, handled the hiring. The background checks were extensive. The consequences for betrayal were understood. But this one was different. He noticed her. She was standing in the foyer when he returned from a meeting that had ended with 2 men begging for their lives. She held a mop in her hands, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her uniform crisp and unremarkable. She was plain, ordinary, the kind of woman who would disappear in a crowd. And yet she was staring at him, not with fear, not with the nervous, averted glances his presence usually inspired. She was looking at him, her gaze steady, her expression unreadable. Dante stopped walking. Their eyes met across the marble foyer, and something flickered in her expression. Recognition. Sorrow. It vanished before he could analyze it, replaced by the blank professionalism of a servant who knew her place. She bowed her head and stepped aside. Dante moved toward the elevator, but he felt her eyes on his back the entire way. He did not turn around. He never turned around, but his hands, hidden at his sides, had curled into fists. That evening, Victor slid a personnel file across Dante's desk. Her name is Elena Vasquez, 34 years old, no criminal record, worked as a housekeeper for 3 wealthy families over the past decade. Like this video if it's interesting, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. And comment your thoughts below. Your opinion matters. Let's continue. All references check out. She's clean, boss. Dante flipped through the documents without really seeing them. Clean. Everyone looked clean on paper. Paper could be fabricated. References could be bought. His hands moved sharply. Why did the last families let her go? Victor shifted uncomfortably. According to her, she left voluntarily each time. Said she was searching for someone. Dante's fingers went still. Searching for who? She did not say. But boss, I ran her through every database we have. Facial recognition, financial records, travel history. There is nothing suspicious. She is just a maid. Just a maid. Dante closed the file. He did not believe in just anything. Over the following days, Dante found himself watching her. He told himself it was suspicion, vigilance, the instincts that had kept him alive in a world where everyone wanted him dead. But it was more than that. Elena moved through his penthouse like water, fluid and unobtrusive. She cleaned without disrupting. She cooked without fanfare. She existed in the margins of his life, never demanding attention. And yet she commanded all of his attention. It was the way she positioned herself when she entered a room, always within his line of sight, never approaching from behind. When she needed to speak to other staff, she faced them directly, her lips forming words slowly and clearly, as if she was aware that someone might be reading them. It was the way her hands moved when she worked. Precise, deliberate, almost like someone who understood the weight of gesture. On the fourth night, Dante descended to the kitchen at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep. The nightmares had returned, fragmented images of a hospital room, the smell of antiseptic, a child's silent screams that no one could hear. He expected to find the kitchen empty. Instead, he found Elena. She was standing at the counter, her back to him, washing dishes by hand despite the industrial dishwasher nearby. Her shoulders were tense, her movements mechanical. Dante stepped closer, his footsteps silent on the tile floor. He was 3 feet behind her when she finally turned, and there was no surprise in her eyes. She had known he was there. How? He signed without thinking, forgetting she could not possibly understand. What are you doing? But her eyes dropped to his hands, followed the movement of his fingers. Then she did something that stopped his heart. She raised her own hands and signed back. I cannot sleep either. The world tilted. Dante stared at her hands, those ordinary, unremarkable hands, as they formed words in his language. His private language. The language most people refused to learn because they saw him as broken. You know sign language? He signed, the statement landing somewhere between accusation and wonder. Yes, she said aloud, her voice soft. Then she signed it again. I learned a long time ago. Why? The question hung between them like a blade. Her expression flickered with that same unreadable something he had seen on her first day. Sorrow, guilt, a weight too heavy to name. Because of a boy, she signed, her movements slower now. A boy I could not save. Dante felt the air leave his lungs. What boy? She did not answer immediately. Her hands trembled as they rose. A boy who lost everything because of what was done to him. A boy who, she stopped. Her eyes glistened with tears. I should go, she whispered, forgetting to sign. She moved past him toward the service stairs. Dante caught her arm. The contact was electric, a jolt that shot through his palm and up his arm. She froze, her pulse racing beneath his fingers. Who are you? He signed with his free hand. Elena looked at him, and her mask crumbled completely. Someone who has been looking for you for 22 years. She pulled free and disappeared up the stairs, leaving Dante standing alone in the silent kitchen. His heart was pounding. Deep in his memory, something stirred. A fragment of a dream. A flash of face. A feeling. Of warmth in the cold hospital room where he had woken up deaf and alone. Who was she? And what did she know about what had been done to him? If you are as desperate to find out the truth as Dante is, subscribe now and stay with me, because what Elena reveals next will change everything. The next morning, Victor appeared with an urgent message. Boss, we have a problem. Salvatore held a meeting last night. Unauthorized. He has been talking to the other families. Planting seeds. Dante's blood ran cold. Seeds about what? Victor Sverlut. About your fitness to lead. He is saying the Moretti Empire needs a whole man at the helm. Someone who is not. He trailed off. Broken. The word hung unspoken in the air. Let him talk. Dante signed, his movements dangerously calm. Words are air. Ideal in action. But as Victor left, Dante's mask slipped. His uncle was finally making his move. And now, in the same moment, a mysterious woman from his past had appeared, speaking in riddles about a boy she could not save. 2 threats. Or perhaps they were connected. Dante reached for Elena's personnel file and read every word, every date, every detail. There, buried in her work history, he found something that made his blood freeze. Before she became a housekeeper, Elena Vasquez had worked as a nurse at St. Catherine's Hospital, the same hospital where Dante had lost his hearing at age 10, the same hospital where his mother had died, the same hospital that had burned to the ground 2 months later, destroying every record, every piece of evidence. Dante's hands shook as he closed the file. She knows, he thought. She knows what they did to me. And she had walked into his home to find him. Why? To help him? Or to finish what someone had started 22 years ago? If you're already feeling that tension, that anticipation of what's about to unfold, hit that subscribe button right now and comment where we're watching from. Let's continue. Dante could not confront her. That thought haunted him through a sleepless night and into the gray light of dawn. He was a man who had ended lives with a single order. He had stared into the eyes of killers without flinching. He had built an empire on the corpses of those who underestimated him. And yet he could not walk down the hall and demand answers from Maid, because some part of him, buried deep beneath years of armor, was terrified of what she might say. A boy I could not save. Her hand had shaped those words in the dim kitchen light. The sorrow in her eyes. The weight of 2 decades pressing against her features. She had been at St. Catherine's, the same hospital where his mother had brought him after the headache started. The same hospital where he had fallen asleep one night, a healthy 10-year-old boy, and woken up to a world of complete silence. Acute meningitis, the doctors had told his father. A tragic complication. Irreversible damage to the auditory nerves. But Dante had never believed it. Healthy children did not suddenly lose their hearing. Healthy children did not wake up screaming into a void where no one could hear them, and worse, where they could hear nothing in return. Something had happened to him in that hospital. Something everyone had worked very hard to cover up. Elena Vasquez was the first thread he had found in 22 years. He could not pull it carelessly, not when it might unravel everything. So instead, he watched. He rearranged his schedule to be present during hours he would normally spend elsewhere. He took calls in the living room while Elena dusted the shelves. He ate meals at the kitchen island while she cleaned the counters. She was aware of his surveillance. He could see it in the careful neutrality of her expression, the way she kept her movements measured and unhurried. She did not try to avoid him, but she did not seek him out either. A careful dance, a silent negotiation. On the 3rd day, he broke first. She was arranging fresh flowers in the foyer, white lilies, his mother's favorite, though he had never told anyone that. Why lilies? He signed, watching her hands pause over the stems. She did not look up immediately. When she did, her expression was guarded but not hostile. They represent remembrance, she signed back. I thought this house could use some. Remembrance of what? Of the things we lose. The things we try to get back. Dante felt his jaw tighten. She was speaking in riddles again, and he had never had patience for games. You were a nurse, he signed, stepping closer. At St. Catherine's, before it burned down. If she was surprised, she did not show it. Yes. Why did you come here? I told you. I was looking for someone. For me. Yes. The single word hung between them like a hell breath. Why? What do you want from me? Elena set down the flower she was holding and turned to face him fully. For the first time, he saw the full weight of years in her eyes. The exhaustion, the guilt, the desperate need that had driven her to this moment. I do not want anything from you, she signed. I owe you something. Something I've been carrying for 22 years. What do you owe me? Her hands trembled. The truth. Before she could say more, the elevator doors opened. Victor emerged with 2 lieutenants, their expressions grim. Boss, we need you now. Salvatore has made his move. He has called a council meeting tonight. All the family heads will be there. Dante's attention snapped to his men, his body shifting into cold calculation. What is his play? He's claiming you are unfit to lead. He says he has evidence that you have been compromised, that someone close to you is feeding information to the feds. The words hit like a physical blow. Dante's eyes cut to Elena, who had gone very still. Compromised. Someone close to him. Was this her game? Had she wormed her way into his home to give his enemies ammunition? Get her out of my sight, he signed to Victor. Put her in the secure room. No one talks to her until I return. Elena's eyes widened, but she did not resist as Victor's men moved toward her. She held Dante's gaze across the room, her hands moving quickly. I'm not your enemy. Please, you have to let me explain. Explain what? That you've been lying since the day you walked in. I was not lying. I just was not ready. Ready for what? She was silent for a long moment. Then her hands moved slowly, deliberately, ready to tell you who really took your hearing. And why. The words stopped him cold. Who really took your hearing? Not an illness. Not a complication. Someone had taken it. Boss, Victor urged. We need to go now. Dante turned away from Elena, forcing his body toward the elevator. But his mind stayed behind, circling her words. Someone had stolen his hearing. And Elena knew who. What happens at the council meeting will shock you to your core. If you have not subscribed yet, do it now, because you do not want to miss what Salvatore reveals and how Dante responds. The council meeting was held in a restaurant the Moretti family had owned for 3 generations. The private dining room had seen more blood deals and broken oaths than most battlefields. Tonight, it held the heads of the 5 families who controlled organized crime on the eastern seaboard, and Salvatore Moretti stood at the head of the table like a man who believed he had already won. Thank you all for coming, Salvatore said as Dante entered. I know this is unusual, but I think we all agree that the Moretti organization's recent leadership has been concerning. The family heads shifted their gazes to Dante. He walked to his seat at the opposite end of the table, his expression betraying nothing. Salvatore, Don Luciano spoke. You called this meeting? You said you had evidence of problems. Salvatore smiled, oily and self-satisfied. My nephew has done admirable work. No one can deny that. But leadership requires more than competence. It requires completeness, the ability to hear threats coming, to listen to advisors, to participate in the subtle negotiations that keep our families from war. Dante's hands clenched beneath the table. And now, Salvatore continued, I have received information that Dante has been harboring someone dangerous, a federal informant placed in his household to gather evidence against all of us. The room rippled with tension. That is a lie. Dante signed, and Marco interpreted. Is it? Salvatore produced a manila folder and slid it across the table. This woman, Elena Vasquez, was not just a nurse at St. Catherine's. She was also a witness in a federal investigation. An investigation into your father's dealings with corrupt hospital administrators. An investigation that was shut down after St. Catherine's mysteriously burned to the ground. Dante's blood ran cold. She is not here by accident, nephew. She is here to finish what she started 22 years ago. She is here to destroy you and all of us with you. Every eye was on Dante now. Every man at that table was calculating, weighing loyalty, measuring threat, deciding whether the deaf boss was worth defending. Dante rose to his feet. If she is a threat, then I will handle her. But I will not be lectured on leadership by a man who spent 20 years whispering poison from the shadows. A man who told my dying father that I was worthless. Careful, nephew, Salvatore interrupted. The men in this room do not care about family drama. They care about strength, about capability. And they're starting to wonder whether a man who cannot hear is truly capable of protecting their interests. The silence stretched. One by one, the family heads began to nod. Dante saw the tide turning against him, felt 20 years of work crumbling in a single evening. This meeting is premature, he signed. I will investigate the woman. I will uncover the truth. And then what? Salvatore laughed. You will listen to her explanations? The room chuckled. Dante turned and walked out without another word. Behind him, he felt through the vibrations in the floor the sound of his empire beginning to crack. He found Elena in the secure room, a windowless space in the basement designed to hold enemies. She was sitting on a metal chair, her hands folded in her lap, her expression calm despite everything. Dante stepped inside and closed the door. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Elena raised her hands. You went to the council meeting. They used me against you. How do you know that? Because that is what I would do if I were Salvatore. Dante's eyes narrowed. You know him. I know what he did. Her hands were shaking now. I know what happened at St. Catherine's. I was there, Dante. I was the nurse assigned to your room. He felt the ground shift beneath his feet. What happened to me? Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she did not look away. You were not sick. You were never sick. The meningitis diagnosis was fabricated. The treatment they gave you was poison, a drug designed to destroy your hearing permanently. And it was ordered by someone in your own family. The words hit like bullets. Who? He demanded, stepping closer. Who ordered it? Elena's hands trembled violently as she formed the next words. Your father. The world went white. Heart attack. And they tried to kill you too. But I altered your dosage. I gave you a chance to survive. And when the hospital burned down, I ran. I have been hiding ever since. Looking for proof. Looking for you. Dante sank to his knees. His father. The man whose portrait hung in his office. The man whose legacy he had spent his entire life protecting. His father had tried to murder him. And Salvatore had given the order. I have proof. Elena signed, moving closer. Medical files. Financial records. Correspondence between your father and Salvatore. I buried them when I ran, but I can get them. Dante looked up at her, his eyes hollow. Why now? Why come to me now after all these years? Elena knelt in front of him. Because I heard Salvatore was making his move. Because I knew he would try to take everything from you again. And because she hesitated. Because I could not save you when you were 10 years old. But I can save you now. The truth Elena has revealed will change everything. But can Dante use it before Salvatore destroys him completely? Subscribe now and continue to the final part where justice is served in a way you will never forget. The truth was a knife, and Dante had spent the night bleeding. He sat alone in his office as dawn crept through the windows, the city waking around him while he remained frozen in the wreckage of everything he thought he knew. His father. The word used to mean strength, protection, legacy. Now it meant betrayal, murder, a blade aimed at his heart by the hand that should have sheltered him. What had his mother discovered? What secret was so devastating that it required the death of a child? His own child. Dante's hands curled into fists against his thighs. The silence around him pressed against his chest like a physical weight. His phone buzzed. Victor. Council set a deadline. 48 hours to prove Elena is not a Fed plant, or they will vote to remove you. Dante stared at the message, feeling nothing. The power games that had consumed his life seemed distant now, like shadows on a cave wall. What did it matter if he controlled the Moretti Empire? What did it matter if he sat at the head of the table? The table had been built on his mother's grave. But then a new thought, cold and clarifying. Salvatore. Salvatore had given the order. Salvatore had tried to kill him. Salvatore had spent 20 years whispering that Dante was broken and worthless. Not because he believed it, because he knew. He knew that if Dante ever discovered the truth, everything Salvatore had built would crumble. Salvatore was afraid, and Dante was done being afraid. He found Elena in the guest room where Victor had moved her. She was sitting by the window, watching the sunrise. She did not turn when he entered, but her hand lifted in acknowledgement. Dante crossed the room and sat across from her. The proof you mentioned, he signed. Where is it? Elena turned to face him. The tears from the previous night had left tracks on her cheeks, but her eyes were clear now. Hidden in a storage unit in New Jersey. I have been paying for it for 22 years. Every month. Never missed a payment. 22 years. The weight of that devotion pressed against his chest. Why, he asked. You could have sold the information. Used it for leverage. Disappeared forever. Why carry this burden for a boy you barely knew? Elena's hands were steady as she replied. Because I saw what they did to you. I held you when you woke up screaming and could not hear your own voice. I watched you reach for your mother and not understand why she was not there. She paused, her expression raw with old grief. I was 23 years old, and I watched a little boy's world shatter because of what powerful men decided he was worth. I could not do anything. I was just a nurse. No power, no resources, no way to fight back. Her hands dropped to her lap, then rose again. But I could remember. I could keep the records. I could make sure that someday, when that little boy was strong enough, he would have the weapons. He needed to fight back. Dante stared at her. In his world, loyalty was transactional. People served him because they feared him or because he paid them. Trust was a weakness. But Elena had carried his truth for 2 decades, asking nothing in return. She had learned his language. She had searched for him. She had walked into danger, knowing what it might cost her. I do not know how to repay you, he signed. Elena shook her head. I did not do it for payment. I did it because it was right. She reached in her bag and pulled out a set of keys. Storage Unit 4C. The files are in a locked box. The combination is your mother's birthday. October 17th, 1969. Dante took the keys, feeling their weight like a promise. Come with me. I want you there when I see them. Elena hesitated. Salvatore's men are watching you. If I am seen, let them watch. I am done hiding. I am done being the man they tried to make me. The storage unit was exactly where Elena said it would be, a nondescript facility in a forgotten corner of Newark. Dante brought a small team. Victor, 2 trusted lieutenants, and Elena. They moved quickly, sweeping for surveillance while keeping watch. The unit was small, barely larger than a closet. Inside, covered in dust, but undisturbed, sat a metal lockbox. Dante approached it slowly, his heart pounding. His mother's birthday, October 17th, 1969. He entered the combination. The lock clicked open. Inside, wrapped in plastic sheeting, lay a stack of files nearly 6 inches thick. Medical records, financial statements, letters, handwritten on personal stationery, and photographs. Dante's hands trembled as he lifted the first picture. It showed a young boy, himself, lying in a hospital bed, unconscious, with tubes running into his arms. The timestamp read October 1992. The next photograph showed 2 men standing in a hospital corridor, their heads bent together in conversation. His father and Salvatore. The letter beneath was written in his father's hand. Dante recognized the sharp, angular script from 100 documents. The boy is a liability. His mother has been dealt with. He must follow. S will handle the details. When it is done, the inheritance passes to him as agreed. Dante read the words 3 times, waiting for them to change. None came. His father had written these words. His father had ordered his death, and Salvatore had been chosen to execute it. Elena moved closer, her hand touching his arm gently. I am sorry, she signed. I am so sorry. Dante looked at the box full of evidence. 22 years of truth waiting in the darkness. Then he gathered the files into his arms. They thought I was the liability, he signed. They thought I was the weak one, the broken one, the one who could not threaten them. He looked at Elena. They were wrong. This is the moment everything changes. If you have made it this far, you are part of this journey now. Subscribe, share this story, and let us see how Dante delivers justice. The council convened 3 days later, in the same restaurant where Salvatore had tried to orchestrate Dante's downfall. This time, Dante arrived first. He sat at the head of the table, his father's seat, Salvatore's coveted throne, and waited. The family heads arrived one by one, their expressions wary. Word had spread that Dante was planning something. Salvatore arrived last, his smile firmly in place. Nephew, same hospital where my father and mother were patients. The same hospital where, according to every record, I contracted meningitis and lost my hearing. Salvatore's expression froze. But I did not contract meningitis. I was poisoned, deliberately, by drugs designed to destroy my auditory nerves permanently. Dante opened the lockbox and began laying documents on the table. These are the medical records, the original ones, not the copies that were lost when the hospital burned down. They show exactly what drugs were administered, in what dosages, and who authorized the treatment. The family heads leaned forward to examine the papers. And these are the financial records. Wire transfers from my father's accounts to my uncle Salvatore. 2 payments, one before my hospitalization, one after. The first labeled consulting fees. The second labeled completion bonus. Salvatore's face went pale. Those documents are forgeries, and this, Dante continued, producing the final piece of evidence, is a letter, written in my father's own hand, authorizing my death, naming my uncle as the one who would handle the details. He slid the letter down the table. Don Luciano read it slowly. His face darkened with each word. Is this genuine? Have your people verify it. I will wait. Silence. Then Luciano looked at Salvatore. You told us Dante was a threat. You told us he was compromised, unfit to lead. Salvatore began to stammer. But it seems you were the one who tried to destroy him, before he was even old enough to be a threat. The other family heads exchanged glances. One by one, they nodded. The council finds Salvatore Moretti's accusations to be without merit. Furthermore, in light of this evidence, the evidence is fabricated. Salvatore exploded. This woman is lying. Dante rose. The only conspiracy was the one you ran 22 years ago. The one that killed my mother. The one that tried to kill me. The one that gave you everything you have today. He stepped around the table, approaching his uncle. You spent 2 decades telling everyone I was broken, that I was less than, that my silence made me weak. He stopped directly in front of Salvatore. But my silence gave me one gift you never anticipated. I learned to watch, to read faces, to see truths that people thought they were hiding. Dante's hands rose one final time. I saw your guilt every time you looked at me. I just did not know what it meant. Until now. He turned to Victor. Take him. The guards moved forward. Salvatore tried to fight, tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. If you're already feeling that tension, that anticipation of what's about to unfold, hit that subscribe button right now. The council watched in silence as the man who had tormented Dante for 20 years was dragged from the room. And Dante stood at the head of the table, a man who had been born in his silence and raised in shadow, finally stepping into the light. Later that night, Dante found Elena on the rooftop terrace. She was standing at the railing, looking out at the city lights. The wind carried sounds Dante would never hear, but he could feel the city's pulse in the vibration of the building. He approached slowly, letting her see his reflection in the glass. She turned, and for the first time since they met, she smiled. It transformed her face, turned her from a woman carrying an impossible burden into someone young, almost hopeful. It is over, she signed. After 22 years, it is over. For Salvatore, Dante agreed. But not for you. Her smile faded slightly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. This is a new identity. Clean papers. A trust fund, enough to start over anywhere in the world. You have earned your freedom, Elena. You do not have to run anymore. She took the envelope without opening it. And what about you? What happens now? Dante considered the question. I rebuild. I lead. I make this family into something worth leading. Something my mother would have been proud of. He paused. But I do not want to do it alone. Elena looked up sharply. I know you have given enough. I know you do not owe me anything else. But these past few days, you're the first person in 20 years who saw me. Not the deaf boss. Not the broken heir. Me. He stepped closer. Stay. Not as a maid. Not as a witness. Stay because he stopped, unsure how to finish. Elena reached up and touched his face. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. Then she raised her other hand and signed. Because you are not broken. You never were. You were just someone who had to find his own way to be heard. She stepped closer, rising on her toes until their faces were inches apart. And I hear you. I always have. She kissed him, and in the silence that had defined his entire life, Dante finally found something he never expected. Not sound, not the healing of old wounds, but something better. Someone who spoke his language. Someone who had kept faith for 22 years. Someone who stayed. The night sky stretched endless above them, and the city hummed with life they could not hear but could feel. Dante held Elena close, his arms wrapped around her. Not lonely, not empty, complete. And somewhere, in a memory he could never fully grasp, a 10-year-old boy who had lost everything finally understood that he had been saved. Not by doctors, not by medicine, not by the power his family had hoarded for generations. By a young nurse who refused to look away. By a woman who carried the truth until he was strong enough to hear it. By love that waited, patient and unwavering, until he was ready to receive it. Thank you. Dante signed against Elena's hair. She pulled back just enough to sign her response. You do not have to thank me. You just have to live. Really live. For your mother. For yourself. For us. Dante looked at this ordinary woman who had done extraordinary things. I will. And in the silence of the night, standing on the edge of everything he had built and everything he had lost, Dante Moretti finally understood. His silence had never been his weakness. It had been his shield, and now, with Elena beside him, it would become his strength. In a world full of noise, the quietest man in the room heard the only voice that mattered, the one that had been waiting 22 years just to tell him the truth. If this story moved you, if you felt every twist and every moment of justice, then you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel was made for. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us for the next story that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last word.